Slobodan Milošević, accused of genocide and crimes against humanity, is dead. After 4 years on trial at The Hague, the former Serb leader died alone in his cell. He was charged with directing Europe's worst post-war atrocities across the Balkans.
It's over for this monster who wrecked Europe and whose role in the history of modern Europe will always be a very black page.
And in other news, the American hostage seized with Norman Kember has been killed in Iraq. Good evening. Slobodan Milošević, the first head of state to stand trial for crimes against humanity, was found dead in his cell this morning at the War Crimes Tribunal in The Hague. He was 64. Yugoslavia's former president had been on trial for 4 years, accused of orchestrating Europe's bloodiest recent wars in Bosnia, Croatia and Kosovo in the 1990s. Well, Tim Franks is at The Hague now. Tim.
There are questions swirling in the cold night air here at The Hague, Darren. Questions about whether more could have been done to have treated Slobodan Milošević's severe medical conditions, and indeed questions as to whether this trial should have been over years ago. Slobodan Milošević was never in any doubt. He may have fallen from head of state to prisoner in the dock, but he remained unbowed.
I consider this tribunal a false tribunal and indictments false indictments. It is illegal.
This evening he left for the final time the prison that had been his home for almost 5 years. He'd been found dead in his cell earlier in the day. For those who'd spent years pursuing him, frustration.
It is regrettable for all witnesses, for all survivors, for all victims that are expecting justice.
Milošević had been brought to The Hague to face the worst crimes in the book. Genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity. Milošević always denied direct responsibility.
Milošević organized a few assassination attempts against my own life. What can I say? That's a pity. He didn't face justice in Belgrade for all atrocities he committed over there.
The end for Milošević came after the war in Kosovo. After a decade of bloodshed in the former Yugoslavia, a dread new phrase had been coined, ethnic cleansing. Now the rest of Europe is trying to drag Serbia from pariah to partner.
What's important is that the region, particularly the people of Serbia, now draw a line across Milošević's past and his life, which was a malign influence on the people of Serbia and the whole of the region.
Tonight, some in Belgrade were mourning. To them, Milošević is still the saviour of Serbia. But to many more, he'll remain the butcher of the Balkans, the man whose years in power were fuelled by the blood of countless others. And now at last we know that there won't be a final reckoning here in The Hague. His trial had been drawing to a close, but we'll get no verdict from the judges, only from the historians. Darren.
Tim, thank you. Well, President Milošević began his career as a party official in communist Yugoslavia, a multi-ethnic state. But with the collapse of communism, he reinvented himself as a nationalist leader of the Serbs. In 1991, his Serb-dominated Yugoslav army attacked Croatia and Slovenia after they split from Yugoslavia. In 1992, Bosnia declared independence. Milošević backed the Bosnian Serbs in a war against Muslims and Croats. In 1999, he supported Serb attacks on Kosovo's Albanians. More than 500,000 refugees fled the province. Those wars cost at least 100,000 lives, probably many more. Here's our World Affairs editor, John Simpson.
Under Slobodan Milošević, the Serbs were manipulated into fighting 4 separate wars. They lost each one of them. He was a brilliant tactician, but strategically he failed every time. The wars he deliberately provoked as he broke up the former Yugoslavia marked the conscience of Europe. Ethnic cleansing, the concentration camps, the siege of Sarajevo, the genocide at Srebrenica. He may not have personally ordered each one of them, but the responsibility goes back to him. Today, the American who negotiated the Dayton Accords over Bosnia with him was scathing.
It's over for this monster who wrecked Europe and whose role in the history of modern Europe will always be a very black page. Probably the worst leader, other than the communist leaders, in Europe since World War II.
Yet as a young communist politician under Tito, he cut an attractive figure. It was when Tito died, having failed to create a strong successor, that Milošević got his chance. In 1989, he visited the embattled Serbian minority in the predominantly Albanian province of Kosovo and promised to protect them. The wave of Serbian nationalism had started. Milošević rode it to become leader, and he used the Serbian-dominated Yugoslav army against the Slovenes and the Croats, and he stirred up the Serbs in Bosnia against the Muslims there. It was in the latter stages of the Bosnian War that his protege, Ratko Mladic, personally oversaw the massacre of Muslim men and boys at Srebrenica.
There is no one who can believe what is mentioned as a organized genocide, even organized from Belgrade and even organized by me. It's really out of consideration.
What eventually brought Milošević down, though, was Kosovo. His threats to the ethnic Albanians who lived there provoked NATO into bombing Serbia and its forces. NATO thought the bombing would last a few days. Instead, Milošević didn't give in for 11 weeks. But when he did, it was his last defeat.
I think the days when Slobodan Milošević was a hero of the Serbs, and there certainly were days when he was, are over. And I don't think there are a lot of people in Serbia now who will genuinely mourn his passing.
Now that Milošević...